She told her Uber driver, "My boyfriend is so dumb. I've been cheating for months and he has no clue," during a ride. The driver was my cousin and called me immediately. I sent screenshots of her cheating to her entire family group chat, her boss, and her church. She lost her job, got disowned, and her pastor called her a sinner. I, 29M, thought I had found the woman I was going to marry. We had been together for 2 years, living together for 8 months, and I was actually looking at engagement rings online during my lunch breaks. Life has a funny way of destroying everything you think you know in a single phone call. My cousin works as an Uber driver part-time to pay for his graduate school. He called me Tuesday evening while I was making dinner, waiting for my girlfriend to come home from her book club meeting. The tone in his voice immediately told me something was wrong. He explained that he had just dropped off a passenger who spent the entire 15-minute ride bragging to her friend on the phone about how she had been cheating on her boyfriend for months. She described me perfectly, my job, where we lived, even mentioned my dog by name. She laughed about how clueless I was, how easy it was to lie to me, and how she was planning to string me along until she found someone better. My cousin had recognized her from the photos I had shared on social media over the past year. He was calling because he didn't know what else to do. I stood in our kitchen, wooden spoon still in my hand, feeling like the ground had disappeared beneath my feet. Everything made sense suddenly. The late nights, the new clothes, the way she had become protective of her phone, the mysterious calls she would take in the other room. When she came home that night, I acted normal. I asked about book club, listened to her elaborate story about discussing some novel I had never heard of, watched her lie to my face with practiced ease. She kissed me goodnight like nothing had happened, like she hadn't spent her ride home bragging about betraying me. I couldn't sleep. I lay there next to her, watching her peaceful face in the darkness, wondering how many times she had come home to me after being with someone else. The woman I loved, the woman I was planning to propose to, was a complete stranger. The next morning, after she left for work, I did something I had never done before. I went through her phone. She had left it charging on the kitchen counter, something that would never happen if she knew I was suspicious. Her passcode was our anniversary date, which felt like another cruel joke. What I found was worse than I had imagined. Months of messages with multiple men. Photos I won't describe. Plans made and executed while I was at work or visiting my parents. She had an entire secret life that I knew nothing about. But the worst part was reading her messages about me. She called me pathetic, boring, said I was a convenient placeholder until something better came along. She mocked my career, my hobbies, even the way I showed affection. The woman who told me she loved me every day had been laughing about me behind my back for months. I took screenshots of everything. Every conversation, every photo, every cruel comment about me and our relationship. My hands were shaking as I saved each piece of evidence, but I felt strangely calm. The pain was there, crushing and overwhelming, but underneath it was something else, a cold, determined anger. I knew her family well. We had spent holidays together, gone on vacation with her parents, and I was close with her younger sister. She came from a very traditional, religious family who believed strongly in loyalty and commitment. Her father was a deacon at their church, and she had always presented herself as someone who shared their values. I also knew her boss because she worked at a small accounting firm where reputation and trustworthiness were everything. She had always been proud of her professional image, often talking about how important it was to maintain appearances in her field. That afternoon, while she was at work, I created a group message that included her parents, her 2 siblings, her grandmother, and several aunts and uncles. I attached the most damning screenshots, the ones where she explicitly discussed her affairs and mocked our relationship. I included a simple message explaining that I thought they should know who she really was before I disappeared from their lives forever. I sent a separate message to her boss with screenshots of conversations where she had talked about lying to clients and manipulating situations at work to cover for her personal activities. I explained that I felt obligated to share this information given the nature of her position handling sensitive financial information. The final message went to her pastor. She had been actively involved in the church, even leading a young adults group focused on Christian relationships and values. I sent him the screenshots along with an explanation of the situation, noting that she was scheduled to speak at an upcoming event about maintaining faith-based relationships. After sending everything, I packed my belongings and moved them to my cousin's apartment. I left her house key on the kitchen counter along with a note explaining that I knew everything and that she should not contact me. My phone started buzzing within an hour. First her sister called, then her mother, then her father. I ignored them all. She tried calling me dozens of times, sending text after text begging me to answer, to let her explain. I blocked her number. By evening, my cousin told me she had been calling him, crying and demanding that he tell her where I was. She had apparently been fired from her job that afternoon after her boss confronted her with the evidence I had provided. Her family had already cut contact with her father telling her not to come home until she had figured out how to make amends for her sins. The pastor had called her personally to tell her that her services were no longer needed at the church and that she would need to seek spiritual guidance elsewhere. The young adults group she had been leading was particularly hurt, as many of them had looked up to her as a role model for Christian relationships. Update 1. 3 days later, she showed up at my cousin's apartment. I watched from the window as she sat in her car for over an hour, crying and occasionally getting out to ring the doorbell. My cousin wasn't home, and I didn't answer. Eventually, she left a handwritten letter under the door. The letter was 6 pages long, filled with apologies and explanations that all sounded hollow. She claimed that her affairs meant nothing, that she was going through a difficult time and made terrible choices, that she loved me and only me. She begged for a chance to explain, to make things right, to prove that she could change. Reading it felt surreal. She was asking for forgiveness while simultaneously trying to minimize what she had done. She suggested that I had overreacted by involving her family and her job, that our relationship problems should have stayed between us. She was more upset about facing consequences than she was about the betrayal itself. I threw the letter away without finishing it. My cousin told me that mutual friends were asking questions. Word was spreading quickly through our social circle about what had happened. Some people thought I had gone too far by involving her family and workplace. Others supported my decision, saying that actions have consequences and that she had made her choices. Her sister reached out through social media, not to defend her, but to apologize for not seeing the signs. She told me that the family was devastated and felt completely deceived. Her parents were questioning everything they thought they knew about their daughter. Her grandmother, who she had always been especially close to, had apparently said she didn't want to see or speak to her again. Update 2. A week after everything exploded, I learned that she had moved in with one of the men she had been seeing. My cousin heard this from someone at his gym who knew her through work connections. Apparently, she had nowhere else to go after her family disowned her and had burned through her savings trying to find a new apartment on her own. This information confirmed what I had suspected, that her relationship with this person was more serious than just casual cheating. She hadn't just betrayed me physically. She had been building an entire alternative life while pretending to plan a future with me. I also found out that her firing had been immediate and public. Her boss had called an all-staff meeting to discuss integrity and professional conduct, without naming her specifically, but everyone knew what had happened. In a small industry where reputation matters enormously, word was already spreading to other firms. Finding new employment in her field was going to be extremely difficult. The pastor had been even more thorough than I had expected. He had apparently shared the situation with other church leaders as a cautionary tale about deception and moral failure. She would not be welcome at any of the affiliated churches in our area, effectively cutting her off from the religious community that had been central to her identity. Part of me wondered if I had gone too far. The rational part of my mind understood that I was angry and hurt and had acted from a place of pain. But the larger part of me felt that everything that happened to her was a direct result of choices she had made over many months. I hadn't forced her to cheat or lie or mock our relationship. I had simply revealed the truth about who she really was. Update 3. 2 weeks after the revelation, I ran into her mother at the grocery store. It was awkward and painful, but she approached me with tears in her eyes. She apologized profusely for her daughter's behavior and told me that the family was heartbroken about how everything had unfolded. Her mother explained that they had no idea their daughter was capable of such deception. She said they felt like they had failed as parents and were struggling to understand how someone they had raised with strong moral values could behave so poorly. She asked if there was any chance for reconciliation, not just between her daughter and me, but between her daughter and the family. I told her honestly that I had no interest in reconciling with her daughter, but that the family relationships were not my decision to make. I explained that I had shared the information because I felt they deserved to know the truth about who they were supporting and celebrating. What they chose to do with that information was entirely up to them. She thanked me for being honest with them and said that while the method had been shocking, they were ultimately grateful to know the truth. She mentioned that her daughter had been lying to the family about many things for years, and this revelation had opened their eyes to a pattern of deception they had previously missed. A month later, I heard through mutual friends that she had left town entirely. The man she had moved in with had apparently grown tired of the drama surrounding her situation and ended their relationship. With no job prospects, no family support, and a damaged reputation, she had decided to start over somewhere else. I felt a mixture of relief and something that might have been pity. Relief that I wouldn't have to worry about running into her or dealing with continued attempts at contact. Pity because, despite everything she had done, watching someone's entire life collapse was sobering. My cousin asked me if I regretted how I had handled everything. I thought about it for a long time before answering. The revenge had been swift and complete, but it hadn't made the pain of betrayal disappear. It hadn't given me back the time I had wasted or the trust that had been broken, but I realized I didn't regret it. She had made deliberate choices to deceive and hurt me while building relationships with other people. She had mocked my love and planned to continue using me until something better came along. The consequences she faced were the natural result of her actions being brought into the light. I had simply refused to be the only one living in darkness about who she really was. Everyone else deserved the truth too. Her family who loved and supported her, her employer who trusted her with important responsibilities, her church community who looked to her as a role model. 6 months later, I was doing better. The initial devastation had faded into something more manageable, though I found myself being more cautious about trusting people. I was grateful for my cousin's loyalty and honesty, and I had learned valuable lessons about paying attention to warning signs in relationships. Sometimes I wondered what would have happened if I had simply broken up with her quietly and moved on. Would that have been the more mature approach? Would it have caused less collateral damage? But then I remembered the sound of her voice on that phone call my cousin overheard. The casual cruelty, the complete lack of remorse, the way she had laughed about deceiving someone who loved her. And I knew that someone capable of that level of callousness toward another person deserved to face the full consequences of their choices. The truth had set everyone free, even if the freedom had come at a cost none of us had expected to pay.